a richly wooded estate on the banks of the River Dart in Devon. And through the trees, groups of young people doing keep-fit exercises, hauling on weights, clambering up ropes, swinging from branch to branch like young Tarzans. Who are they, and what are they doing?
Hard luck.
Well, they've come from all over the country, from schools, from shops, offices and factories, to learn something about the art of surviving in the countryside. In the gentle surroundings here, the word survival might sound a bit strange, but we are, in fact, within the boundaries of the Dartmoor National Park. Now, Dartmoor's a pretty severe place, so a knowledge of the skills of rock climbing, fell walking, canoeing and so on helps you to cope with places like Dartmoor with more safety. And that's what these youngsters are learning here. When they've finished their course, they're better qualified to go out and cope with the wild and desolate heart of the moor, which is only 20 kilometres away. Dartmoor is a national park, and it's located in southwest England. There are no towns on the moor, and Tavistock is one of the largest on the perimeter. The area shaded on this map is land above 350 metres. In this programme, we shall be looking mainly at the triangle between two bridges, Tavistock and Oakhampton. This area is distinguished by scenery which can be described briefly as moor and tor. A moor, seen here from the air, is an extensive area of poor drainage. It can be likened to a huge sponge. The surface is composed of a dense layer of peat, which rests on layers of decomposed granite. Deep down is the solid, impermeable granite. The heavy rainfall soaks into the peat until it's saturated, and then water flows on the surface or stands as stagnant pools. This level area, south of Cranmere Pool and north of the Moreton-Hampstead-Tavistock Road, is featureless blanket bog. From the almost level marshy centre, the hills rise to gently rounded summits. There are no trees here, just marsh plants and heather. The wet, acid soil, the low temperature, wind exposure, and restricted vegetation cover discourage even sheep from pasturing here. Not surprisingly, its principal use since 1947 has been as a military training ground. From this desolate heart of Dartmoor originate the rivers Tor, Tane, Dart and Tavy. These rivers, this is the Dart here, cut through gaps between the rounded hills. Not all the summits on Dartmoor are as smooth and rounded as these. Many are crowned with rocky outcrops known as tors. These features are the end product of massive land movements which shaped the scenery of southwest England. The great upland mass that we call Dartmoor was formed by molten rock, lava, finding its way up great vertical cracks in the horizontally bedded sedimentary rocks that covered this area. And then the lava moved along those horizontal bedding planes with such force that it arched, it domed up all those rocks and came bursting through in places. Now, when the molten rock came up and arched up the whole dome of Dartmoor, it had an effect on the sedimentary rocks that it was bursting open. It baked them, it cooked them, it altered them. And the phrase we use for that is metamorphosis. It just means that the rocks, the nature of the rocks has been changed. And in fact, all around this roughly circular mass of granite, you'll find a ring of metamorphosed rock. It's called the aureole. And in the center of that aureole, sticking through, are these granite tors, which are such a characteristic of the Dartmoor mass. But just how were these tors formed? We can see here at Cox's Tor the rocky outcrop on the summit. It is the remains of a former surface. All of the rock here is granite. At one time, the rock could have looked like this. Geologists have explained the location of the tors by the vertical joints which were formed as the granite cooled. Where the joints were close together, the granite was more easily weathered. The more massive and solid blocks between the widely spaced joints were more resistant. The tors are the end product of that resistance. But if you look at these tors, you'll see that they appear to have bedding planes in them, just like sedimentary rocks do. Well, in fact, this is false bedding. This was formed when the rocks cooled, they contracted, and when they contracted, they cracked. And so you get this apparent sedimentary bedding plane. It's nothing of the sort. You also get vertical joints occurring, again because of the contraction on cooling. And it's these vertical joints that help the granite mass to be broken up. You see, granite is an extremely hard rock. Very hard. And yet it can be broken up. And the way it's broken up mostly is by a natural process. Water gets in those joints, then the water freezes in winter, and water, when it freezes, expands, and it bursts fragments of rock off. The cracks that appear in these granite masses aren't just superficial ones. They're not just on the surface. They go right deep into the heart of the mass, which, of course, helps to break that mass up. I mean, just look at this, for example. Right in. And that breaks the rock down into small fragments inside the main body of the rock. Our second stage is to break those smaller fragments down into even smaller fragments, perhaps even to soil-sized particles, and there's a very good example here. Now that soil is full of small pieces of broken up granite and the minerals that make granite up. Mica, feldspar, and quartz. Soil and the numerous blocks broken off the tors are the obvious products of the weathering. The chaotically scattered blocks are called clitter. The tors vary in their shape and size. While some are single clusters of rocks, others, like staple tor, are described as avenue tors. Here we can see that the hilltop has two rock piles divided by a clear space, or avenue. Obviously, they form distinctive landmarks on the skyline, and they are splendid natural viewing points. The granite scenery of moor and tor is the nearest we get in Britain to a desert landscape. It is bleak and inhospitable. And yet, at one time, people lived on the edge of this plateau in preference to other parts of southwest England where there were thick forests and dense vegetation. Scattered over the moor is the evidence of life dating back to the Stone Age. Here, on the eastern slope of the Walkham Valley, between two bridges and Tavistock, a stone's throw from the main road at Merivale, is a cluster of Bronze Age hut circles. Associated with the circles here at Merivale are two rows of standing stones running parallel across the moor. They stand like an avenue. In all, some 60 examples are found on Dartmoor, and in some of them, a larger stone marks the end of the row. Today, granite is used for road building and for the foundations of buildings. Within a kilometre of the Merivale hut circles is this modern granite quarry. It was granite quarrying that led to the building of a prison at Princetown in 1806, The first prisoners were French prisoners of war from the Napoleonic Wars. Later, granite from quarries in this area was carried to Plymouth on the Plymouth and Dartmoor Railway, which opened in 1823. The last remaining section of the railway was closed in 1956. In earlier centuries, the minerals occurring in the rocks were important, especially on the edge of the moor, where mining and quarrying were the basic occupations in scattered settlements. Today, the disused workings stand as local landmarks. Close to the Tavistock-Oakhampton Road, on the western fringe of the National Park, is the chimney and engine house of the Wheal Betsy mine. This distinctive building is duplicated in other parts of Devon, but is more typical of Cornwall. Lead and silver were mined here. Further south, just 2 kilometres away, near Mary Tavy, are the remains of another mine known locally as Braunton's mine. Such ruins are of special interest to industrial archaeologists. In the late 1950s, the mine buildings were demolished, but the drying house, now used as a hay store, has survived. Here, miners left their clothes for drying after working in the mine where they dug for tin, arsenic and copper. The growth of Tavistock can be attributed very largely to the mining industry, especially that of tin, which began in the mid-12th century. Tavistock is located just beyond the boundary of the National Park and stands astride the River Tavy. We can see the line of the former railway which linked Tavistock to Exeter on the one side and Plymouth on the other. Today, it is the roads running parallel to the river and the old railway that are important. It was tin that created the wealth, which led to the growth of towns such as Plympton, Chagford, Ashburton and Tavistock, the 4 stannery towns, that is, towns where, by ancient royal charter, tin mined on Dartmoor was brought to be weighed, stamped and assessed for duty payable to the Crown. In 1844, to the west of Tavistock, the Devon Great Consols Mine area was opened and soon became the richest copper mine in the world. In 1831, Tavistock's population was 5,602, and by 1871 it had risen to nearly 9,000. In that short period, the town was almost rebuilt. The town hall, the market, Duke Street, Plymouth Road and Bedford Square date from that time. A quite different settlement is situated on the northern side of the moor. Astride the main road from Exeter to Oakhampton is the village of Sticklepath. For geologists, this village is of interest because it stands in an area of complicated rocks, the Sticklepath Lustley fault, which cuts through the metamorphic aureole on the edge of the granite. Once there were small-scale industries here when running water meant power, water power. The water flowing off Dartmoor drove the wheels, which in the case of this restored mill, drove the machinery used to manufacture and repair metal tools essential in a farming community. These buildings have been restored as a rural industrial museum. The water wheels, too, have been restored, but the machinery is much as it was at the beginning of the 19th century. The water wheels are connected to the machines by great belts and cogs. Scythes and other cutting tools were once the main products here. Until the Second World War, there were also 2 other water-powered mills in this street. The Rural Industrial Museum has become a tourist attraction in this small village of Sticklepath. But 50 kilometres southwest of Sticklepath, on the granite moorlands of St Austell, there's a very different kind of industrial landscape which can hardly be described as a tourist attraction. Although not a part of Dartmoor, St Austell was produced by the same earth-building movement. The granite has been changed by a process called kaolinization into china clay. This was first extracted here 200 years ago. As you can see, the china clay disintegrates when powerful jets of water are directed at it. For every ton of china clay, there are about 6 to 8 tons of waste, mainly quartz and mica. The excavated holes and waste heaps now scar the horizons. The china clay itself is an essential ingredient of paper, calico, linoleum, toothpaste and medicines. The industry is also an important employer of local labour. Once extraction of china clay from an area has been completed, work is undertaken to try to improve the landscape. So far, the northern half of Dartmoor has escaped this sort of industrial dereliction. Conservationists here have united to oppose such features as the radio mast at North Hessery. They also oppose the occupation of a considerable area of the moor by artillery ranges. The construction of military roads running from the camp at Oakhampton has given access for holiday motorists to the heart of the moor, though the roads are open only on those days when the army is not engaged in firing practice or manoeuvres. But, some claim, both the holiday motorists and the army disturb the peace and isolation of central Dartmoor. This is a moorland of classic granite scenery, the moor and tor scenery. The climate adds an extra hazard to the dangerous bogs and marshes. There is a delicate balance between danger and safety which cannot be ignored by the careful walker. There is also a balance between protected natural beauty and man's influence on the landscape. This too needs care if one of our largest remaining areas of wild natural scenery is to survive.